Have you ever noticed how exhausting it is to constantly try to be a slightly modified version of yourself? We wake up, look in the mirror, and immediately start listing the things we need to fix, hide, or overcompensate for before we even step out the door. It's like we're wearing this invisible, heavy suit of armor, not to protect ourselves from the world, but to protect the world from seeing who we actually are. We spent years fabricating this armor, piece by piece, riveting it together with every piece of criticism we ever received, every rejection we suffered, and every time someone made us feel like we were just a bit too much or not quite enough. We wear it to work. We wear it in our relationships. And sometimes we even wear it when we are completely alone in our own homes, terrified of what will happen if we finally let the guard down. Think about the sheer volume of daily energy required just to maintain that front. It is an active, exhausting psychological task to constantly filter your words, monitor your posture, calculate your reactions, and second-guess your natural instincts just to make sure you fit into an ideal box. We convince ourselves that if we just keep the armor on long enough, we will eventually become the armor. We think that if we successfully perform this idealized, hyper-competent, unbothered version of ourselves, our real vulnerabilities will just dissolve away. But they don't. Beneath the cold, rigid plates of that psychological defense, the real, authentic self remains hidden, isolated, and starved for genuine connection. You cannot feel truly loved or understood by the people in your life if you only allow them to love the shield you hold up in front of you. We live under the profound illusion that healing is a performance of self-improvement, a process where we aggressively scrub away our flaws, polish our strengths, and finally present a flawless product to the world. We treat ourselves like a broken machine that needs to be constantly repaired, tuned up, and optimized. But healing doesn't start when you finally achieve perfection. It doesn't begin when you finally cross that imaginary finish line of having your entire life completely figured out. It starts the exact moment you put the armor down and choose to look at your naked reality without judgment. It begins when you say to yourself, "This is who I am right now, in this exact moment, with all my unresolved questions, my awkward tendencies, my heavy days, and my quiet victories." The thinker, Carl Jung, pointed out that we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. When you spend your life condemning your true nature, you trap yourself in an endless internal civil war where you are both the tyrant and the prisoner. True strength is not found in the ability to endure your own self-inflicted pressure. True strength is found in the willingness to be completely honest with yourself about your limits, your needs, and your desires. Before we dive any deeper into how we can stop fighting ourselves, how we can dismantle this armor plate by plate, and how we can finally step into a life of genuine peace, take a second right now to build a new foundation. Leave a quick affirmation in the comments below. Just write, I am learning to accept who I am today. Let that simple statement be your starting point, your anchor for this session, and your first declaration of truce in the war against yourself. Let the armor drop, just for a moment, and let yourself breathe. Think about how much mental energy you spend every single day just regretting past versions of yourself or wishing you had a completely different personality. It is a quiet, continuous tax we pay to our own minds. We wake up wishing we were the type of person who is effortlessly charismatic at social gatherings, or we berate ourselves for days after a minor interaction because we felt we were too sensitive, too quiet, or too expressive. We treat these deeply ingrained, natural traits as if they are malicious flaws that need to be aggressively scrubbed away. This constant internal friction is what we call resistance. It is the refusal to allow reality to be what it is. We are essentially looking at our own psychological makeup and declaring war on it, believing that if we fight hard enough, we can force our true nature into submission. But resistance is an incredibly expensive strategy. In physics, friction generates heat and wears down machinery. In human psychology, internal friction generates anxiety, chronic exhaustion, and profound creative burnout. Think of it like trying to hold a large beach ball underwater. You can do it for a little while if you use all your strength. You can push it down, hold your breath, tense your muscles, and pretend that the surface of the water is perfectly calm and empty. But the entire time you are doing that, your arms are shaking. You can't use your hands for anything else. You can't swim. You can't reach out to anyone. And you can't rest, because the moment you relax your grip for even a fraction of a second, that ball is going to violently pop back up to the surface and splash you right in the face. That beach ball represents your true emotions, your natural temperament, your boundaries, and your actual psychological state. When you spend your entire day trying to suppress your anxiety, hide your sadness, or mask your introversion, you are using 100% of your cognitive resources just to keep the ball underwater. You are using the very energy you need to build a fulfilling life, to create, to connect, and to thrive, just to maintain a false equilibrium. Then we wonder why we feel so completely depleted by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, even when we haven't done any heavy physical labor. We are exhausted because we have been locked in a wrestling match with our own minds since the moment we opened our eyes. When you fight your true nature, you are trapped in a profound paradox. You are trying to use a frustrated, critical mind to build a peaceful life. It simply does not work. If you are naturally a sensitive person who deeply absorbs the environment around you, trying to force yourself to be dulled and detached will only create a deep sense of alienation. If you are someone who needs solitude to recharge, forcing yourself to constantly perform on a stage without a break will eventually break your system. This resistance doesn't change who you are. It only distorts who you are. It turns a natural trait, like sensitivity, into a volatile vulnerability, and it turns a need for solitude into a dark loop of isolation. Healing begins when you look at that beach ball and simply let it float. You stop pushing. You allow it to sit on the surface of the water where it belongs. When you stop resisting the reality of who you are in this moment, a massive amount of psychological energy is suddenly liberated. For the first time in years, that energy is no longer being burned up in the fires of self-hatred and suppression. It is finally available for you to use. You can use it to understand yourself, to adapt, and to make conscious choices based on reality rather than fighting a fiction. When you stop wasting your power trying to force a square peg into a round hole, you can finally start looking around to find where you actually belong. There is a profound concept introduced by the thinker Carl Jung that suggests we do not achieve wholeness by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. He was talking about the pieces of ourselves that we hide away because we think they are completely unacceptable to the world around us. Think of it like a dark, forgotten basement in the back of your mind. Over the course of your life, whenever you made an embarrassing mistake, whenever you felt an emotion that seemed too loud or too needy for the people around you, or whenever you experienced a vulnerability that made you feel exposed, you took that piece of yourself, carried it down those stairs, and threw it into the dark. You locked the heavy door, turned your back on it, and walked away, pretending that the basement didn't exist and that you were entirely made of the pristine, polished rooms upstairs. We convince ourselves that this banishment is a form of self-control. We think that if we ignore our envy, our deep-seated fears, our unfulfilled desires, or our lingering resentments long enough, they will eventually starve to death in the dark. But human psychology does not work that way. Those hidden pieces do not disappear just because we choose to look away from them. In fact, the opposite happens. Left alone in the dark, away from the light of your conscious awareness, these rejected parts of your identity begin to take on a life of their own. They sit down there, pulling the invisible strings of your daily life. They manifest as sudden, unexplainable shifts in your mood, sharp bursts of anxiety when your security is threatened, or intense overreactions to minor comments made by colleagues or loved ones. When someone else triggers a massive emotional reaction in you, it is usually because they accidentally knocked on that locked basement door. True kindness to yourself means finally stopping this endless cycle of internal banishment. It means gathering the courage to walk back down that hallway, turn the key, and unlock the door. It means sitting down on the steps, shining a light into the corners, and realizing that those messy, hidden parts of you aren't monsters looking to destroy your life. They are simply parts of your story that have been desperately wanting to be acknowledged. When you actually look at them closely, you realize that your intense ambition was just trying to protect you from feeling helpless. Your deep sensitivity was just trying to keep you safe from harm. And your hidden anger was just an alarm system telling you that your boundaries were being violated. They were never evil. They were just operating in the dark without your guidance. When you refuse to meet these hidden pieces, you remain fragmented. You spend your life on edge, terrified that someone will find out who you really are beneath the curated surface. But the moment you look your shadow in the eye and say, "I see you, and you belong to me too," the internal tension begins to dissolve. You realize you don't have to be perfectly sanitized to be worthy of your own respect. Healing is not about amputating the parts of yourself that you dislike. It is about bringing them into the light, understanding why they are there, and integrating them into a complete, functioning whole. When you finally stop running from your own basement, you reclaim the parts of your strength, your passion, and your authenticity that you locked away years ago. We live our lives tethered to a constant, internal checklist that we carry around in our minds, like a sacred text. We tell ourselves a very specific story about our own worth. If I can just achieve this particular career milestone, if I can just organize my daily routine perfectly, if I can just become someone who never gets anxious, never loses their temper, and never feels overwhelmed, then I will finally be worthy of respect. We treat self-acceptance like a grand prize or a shiny trophy that we have to earn at the end of an exhausting, lifelong marathon. We tell ourselves that our current self is just a rough draft, a broken prototype, and that we must withhold our own love, kindness, and approval until we finally reach the finished product. But if you look back at your life with complete honesty, you will realize a terrifying truth about this checklist. The finish line keeps moving. Every single time you manage to tick a box off that list, your mind barely pauses to celebrate before it invents 3 more boxes for you to fill. If you land the job you wanted, the checklist suddenly demands that you master the role instantly without ever making a mistake. If you finally manage to establish a healthy habit, the checklist immediately demands that you never have a weak day or a moment of fatigue. It is a brilliant, self-perpetuating trap designed to keep you in a state of perpetual unworthiness. You are running a race where the goalposts are being pushed back every time you get close to them, meaning you are permanently stuck in the position of failing your own standards. This relentless drive for perfection is actually a form of deep psychological violence disguised as ambition. We convince ourselves that our harsh internal critic is a necessary motivator, that if we aren't constantly whipping ourselves with criticism and high expectations, we will simply fall apart or become lazy. But this is an entirely false premise. You cannot criticize yourself into a version of yourself that you finally love. You cannot build a peaceful, stable identity out of bricks made of self-hatred and shame. The acceptance cannot be the reward for fixing the mess. The acceptance has to come first, right in the absolute middle of the mess, or the checklist will simply never end. Think about how much lighter your life would feel if you realized that perfection is a myth invented by fear. Fear tells us that if we are perfect, we can never be rejected, never be hurt, and never be criticized. But perfection doesn't protect you from the unpredictable nature of being alive. It only isolates you from it. When you drop the checklist, you aren't giving up on growth or settling for mediocrity. Instead, you are switching your motivation from fear to care. You start taking care of yourself, not because you are trying to reach some flawless, idealized future state, but because you realize that your current, flawed, deeply human self deserves to be treated with dignity, right now, today, exactly as you are. Imagine for a moment if you treated a close friend, a colleague, or a loved one the exact way you treat yourself whenever you make a mistake. If a friend accidentally missed an important deadline, misplaced their keys, or said something slightly awkward during a social gathering, you wouldn't sit them down, look them in the eye, and replay that mistake to them 50 times while calling them a failure. You wouldn't tell them that this one error defines their entire character or proves they are completely incompetent. Instead, you would be empathetic. You would tell them it's okay, that they were tired, stressed, or simply human, and that they would do better next time. Yet, when it comes to the theater of our own minds, we show absolutely no such grace. We act as the prosecutor, the judge, the jury, and the executioner all at once, running an internal courtroom where the verdict is always guilty. We replay our missteps on an endless loop, agonizing over a clumsy sentence we uttered 3 days ago, or a choice we made 3 years ago. We attach massive, sweeping identities to temporary actions. We don't just say, "I made a mistake." We say, "I am a mistake." We don't just say, "I failed at that task." We say, "I am a failure." This constant internal trial is exhausting, and it keeps us completely frozen in our past. We think that by judging ourselves harshly, we are preventing future failures. We believe that if we punish ourselves enough with guilt and shame, we will somehow beat ourselves into becoming a better person. But shame never leads to transformation. It only leads to hiding, defensiveness, and a deeper sense of unworthiness. Healing begins the exact moment you choose to drop the verdict. Dropping the verdict does not mean you become delusional, praise your mistakes, or pretend that your flaws do not exist. It doesn't mean you stop taking responsibility for your actions. Instead, it means you switch from the role of a harsh judge to the role of a neutral, objective observer. It means looking at your behavior with a sense of calm curiosity rather than emotional condemnation. When you make a mistake, instead of instantly launching into a tirade of self-flagellation, you learn to step back and say, "That happened. It was a mistake. Let me look at why it happened, what I can learn from it, and how I can move forward." When you remove the heavy weight of judgment, you create the breathing room necessary for real learning to take place. In a courtroom filled with tension and fear, everyone is defensive and trying to protect themselves. But when the trial finally ends, the defensiveness can drop. You can finally see yourself clearly, not as a criminal who needs to be punished, but as a complicated, learning human being who is doing the best they can with the tools, the energy, and the understanding they have at any given moment. By dropping the verdict, you give yourself permission to step out of the courtroom and finally step back into your life. The turning point isn't loud. It doesn't usually happen during some massive, dramatic life event surrounded by inspiring music or public applause. It doesn't arrive as a sudden flash of lightning that instantly rewires your brain and changes your entire existence in a single second. Instead, it happens on an entirely ordinary Tuesday afternoon, when you are sitting in your car stuck in traffic, or when you are standing over the sink washing the dishes, and you suddenly realize you are just so deeply, profoundly tired of being your own worst enemy. It is a quiet, heavy realization that washes over you, where you look back at the years of self-criticism, the endless cycles of anxiety, and the constant internal warfare, and you think to yourself, I cannot live like this for another decade. It is the exact moment you say to yourself, okay, this is who I am right now. I have these anxieties. I have these limitations. I have these specific wounds. And I have this complicated history. Up until this turning point, your entire life has been spent trying to rewrite reality. You have been looking at your current self and constantly arguing with what is, wishing you had a different past, a different personality, or a different set of reactions. But at the turning point, you finally realize that arguing with reality is a completely losing battle. It is like screaming at the rain because it is making you wet. The rain does not care about your anger, and your psychological reality does not care about your self-judgment. The turning point is the moment you choose to declare a truce with your current state. This shift from fighting reality to working with reality is where genuine healing takes its very first breath. When you stop fighting who you are, something incredible happens. The battlefield disappears. You are no longer splitting your mind into two opposing armies, one side trying to force change, and the other side desperately defending itself from criticism. Instead, you gather all that scattered, wasted power, and you bring it to the present moment. You look at your anxiety, not as a fatal flaw that makes you unlovable, but as a current condition that you need to navigate. You look at your mistakes, not as proof of your unworthiness, but as the raw data of your life experience. You say, this is the starting line. It might not be the pristine, perfect starting line I wanted, but it is the only one I actually have. Working with reality allows you to make practical, conscious choices for the first time in your life. When you are no longer blinded by the fog of self-hatred, you can actually see the path forward. You can start building a life that fits your actual dimensions, rather than a life designed for an idealized version of you that doesn't exist. This quiet pivot from rejection to alignment is the most radical choice a human being can make. It is the moment you stop waiting for someone else to give you permission to exist, and you finally give it to yourself. From this point onward, you are no longer running away from your shadow. You are walking forward with your whole self, unpolished and undivided, ready to face whatever comes next. Treating yourself with kindness is not about grand gestures, sweeping lifestyle makeovers, or superficial pampering. It isn't a luxury that you schedule once a month at a spa, nor is it a temporary escape from the pressures of your life. Instead, genuine self-kindness is found entirely in the quiet, microscopic choices you make throughout the flow of an ordinary day. It is an internal stance, a way of relating to yourself when things are moving fast, when you are under pressure, or when you feel completely invisible to the world around you. It is the practice of becoming a supportive partner to yourself, rather than a demanding taskmaster who refuses to let you rest. Think about the small, daily moments where you have the opportunity to choose kindness over criticism. It is choosing to turn off the screen and go to sleep at night because you recognize your body is exhausted, instead of forcing yourself to work through burnout just to prove your productivity. It is allowing yourself to say, "I don't know," or "I need help," in the middle of a stressful project, instead of faking absolute certainty and burying yourself under a mountain of imposter syndrome. It is noticing that harsh, familiar internal voice starting to ramp up its critique after a minor mistake, and gently but firmly telling it, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but I have got this handled." These small, seemingly insignificant actions accumulate over time. They act like drops of water falling into a reservoir. Every single time you choose to validate your own exhaustion instead of mocking it, every time you allow yourself to feel a difficult emotion without calling yourself weak, and every time you take a deep breath instead of launching into a panic, you are sending a profound signal to your central nervous system. You are training your brain to realize that you are fundamentally safe with yourself. For so many of us, our own minds are the most dangerous neighborhood we can walk through. Practicing daily kindness changes the terrain. It transforms your internal landscape into a sanctuary, a stable foundation where you can actually process your life without fear of your own self-retaliation. This daily practice requires you to pay close attention to your internal dialogue. Most of us speak to ourselves in a tone we would never dream of using with a stranger on the street. We use words of absolute condemnation, constant urgency, and relentless disappointment. Kindness means disrupting that automated loop. It means learning to pause in the middle of a chaotic afternoon, checking in with your mind and body, and asking a very simple, grounded question. What do I actually need right now to get through this next hour with peace? Sometimes the answer is just a glass of water, 5 minutes of quiet breathing, or permission to drop a low-priority task from your schedule. By honoring those micro-needs, you build a resilient, deeply rooted sense of self-respect that no external circumstance can easily take away from you. We are constantly bombarded with stories of radical, overnight transformation. Our culture loves the narrative of the complete overhaul, the idea that you can wake up one morning, completely delete your past, erase your old habits, and emerge as a totally different person. We see it in marketing, we see it in media, and we internalize it as the ultimate goal of self-improvement. We look at our complex, messy lives and think that the only solution is to tear down the entire structure and start from scratch. We tell ourselves that if we could just find the right book, the right routine, or the right amount of willpower, we could finally shed our current identity like an old coat and become someone entirely new. Someone who is always confident, always productive, and completely unbothered by life's difficulties. But if we look closely at human psychology, we realize that this concept of radical change is an entirely false premise. It is a myth that actually prevents us from healing. Your mind is not a computer that can be wiped clean with a factory reset, nor is it a broken machine where you can simply swap out the old, inconvenient parts for upgraded models. Every habit you have, every defense mechanism you use, and every sensitive reaction you experience was developed for a reason. They are deeply rooted patterns designed to help you navigate, adapt, and survive your life experiences. When you try to force a radical, overnight transformation, you are essentially trying to declare war on your own history. You are attempting to amputate parts of your own identity, and your psychological system will naturally fight back against that violence with immense resistance, anxiety, and exhaustion. Real, sustainable healing does not look like a dramatic rewrite of your entire personality. It looks like an act of integration. It is the slow, quiet process of gathering all the different, scattered pieces of yourself and allowing them to coexist under the same roof. It means recognizing that you can be an ambitious person who also needs deep rest. It means accepting that you can be a strong, capable leader who also harbors moments of profound self-doubt. It means understanding that the quiet, introverted part of you, the fearful part, the joyful part, and the wounded part are all valid components of your internal landscape. You do not need to fix or destroy these parts. You just need to learn how to manage them as a cohesive, complex system. When you drop the illusion of radical change, the immense pressure of performance lifts off your shoulders. You stop looking at your natural traits as obstacles to your success and start looking at them as the raw material you have to work with. You realize that growth is not about becoming a completely different person. It is about becoming more fully who you already are, but with more awareness, more room to breathe, and much more kindness. You stop trying to build an artificial, flawless persona for the world to admire, and you start focusing on the small, daily alignments that allow your authentic self to feel safe, grounded, and whole. Turning down the volume on the demand for perfection is exactly how you make space for real, lasting evolution to take place. When you look at a piece of handmade pottery, the slight irregularities in the clay, the faint fingerprint left by the creator, or the uneven distribution of the glaze are often the exact features that make the object beautiful, compelling, and unique. If it were perfectly symmetrical, completely smooth, and entirely flawless, it would lose its character. It would look like a mass-produced, sterile plastic item, stamped out by a factory line, completely devoid of human touch, history, or soul. Your quirks, your specific sensitivities, your unique anxieties, and even the painful lessons you had to learn the hard way are your irregularities. They are the undeniable proof that you have lived, adapted, struggled, and survived. They are the markings of a real life, etched into your psychological makeup through the simple act of navigating a complex world. Yet, we spend so much of our time trying to grind down these unique edges. We view our sensitivities as fatal flaws that must be hidden at all costs. If we feel deeply affected by a piece of music, a poignant conversation, or the heavy atmosphere of a room, we label ourselves as weak or fragile. If we require more time than others to process a major life transition or to recover from a setback, we condemn ourselves for being slow or incompetent. We treat our natural, individual variations as if they are manufacturing defects that need to be aggressively sanded down until we match the uniform, frictionless standard of the crowd around us. But when you attempt to erase your flaws, you accidentally erase your depth. You sanitize your identity to the point where your true perspective, your creative intuition, and your capacity for genuine empathy become completely muted. Healing begins when you completely change your relationship with these perceived imperfections. When you stop viewing your unique traits as failures of character or flaws to be erased, you can finally see them as the defining features that make your specific perspective valuable. Your sensitivity is not a defect. It is the very tool that allows you to notice details others miss, to connect deeply with people, and to perceive the subtle currents of your environment. Your cautious nature is not a sign of cowardice. It is a protective, analytical gift that keeps you grounded. Your history of mistakes is not a badge of shame. It is a repository of hard-earned wisdom that nobody can ever take away from you. When you embrace your flaws, you are not celebrating stagnation or refusing to learn. Instead, you are choosing to look at your entire self with an attitude of radical inclusion. You are deciding that you no longer need to be a flawless, polished statue to be allowed a seat at the table. You are allowing yourself to be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the exact same time. The moment you stop wasting your life energy apologizing for your natural shape, you unlock the ability to move through the world with a profound sense of ease and authority. You stop asking for permission to occupy space with your unpolished edges, and you finally begin to live from a place of undivided, authentic power. As you move through the rest of your day, step out of this quiet space and return to the noise of your ordinary routine. Pay close attention to the moments where your mind begins to tighten up with self-criticism. Notice the exact instant you make a minor mistake, drop a ball, or feel an uncomfortable wave of anxiety, and your automated internal critic tries to take the driver's seat. When that happens, do not fight the critic and do not panic. Instead, take a slow, deep breath, pause for a single second, and remind yourself that you do not have to be completely perfect to be worthy of peace, respect, and a calm mind. You are allowed to be an unfinished project. You are allowed to have unpolished edges, unanswered questions, and days where you simply do not have everything figured out. We carry this immense, invisible weight of expectations on our shoulders every single day, constantly measuring our current progress against some imaginary future version of ourselves who is completely flawless and never struggles. We treat our present life like a waiting room, assuming that our real existence will only begin once we have successfully eliminated every single one of our vulnerabilities. But this is the only moment you actually have. Your life is happening right now, in the middle of the unorganized rooms, the lingering doubts, and the small daily efforts. The moment you finally give yourself permission to just be human, to be a complicated, learning, adapting individual. That heavy, suffocating weight of perfectionism completely lifts off your chest. Walking forward with self-acceptance does not mean that you stop growing, that you give up on your ambitions, or that you settle for a stagnant life. It means you are changing your entire engine. You are no longer running on the toxic fuel of self-hatred, shame, and fear of failure. Instead, you are choosing to move forward using the sustainable, resilient power of self-care, alignment, and genuine respect for your own rhythm. You start taking steps not to escape the person you are today, but to support the person you are today. You treat yourself like someone you actually like, guiding yourself through challenges with patience, clear boundaries, and an understanding that mistakes are merely part of the terrain. Accept the person you are in this very second, with all your unfinished business, your unique quirks, and your raw potential. You have survived every single one of your hardest days. You have adapted to transitions you thought would break you. And you are still here, learning how to breathe a little easier. As you step into tomorrow, let your baseline be truce, not warfare. Let your primary tool be kindness, not a whip. The moment you stop looking at your own reflection as an enemy to defeat and start treating yourself as an ally to walk with, the constant internal friction fades away. The heavy armor drops to the floor, the battlefield disappears, and your true, authentic journey forward finally begins. The journey toward self-acceptance is not a linear path with a definitive finish line, nor is it a state of permanent, unshakable bliss where you never experience another moment of doubt or insecurity. It is a continuous, daily practice of returning to yourself. Over the course of exploring these chapters, we have peeled back the layers of the armor we wear, analyzed the exhausting friction of our internal resistance, unlocked the basement door to meet our hidden pieces, and systematically dismantled the myth of the perfect checklist. We have watched the courtroom of the mind dissolve as we dropped the verdict, stood at the quiet turning point of an ordinary afternoon, integrated the micro-habits of daily kindness, rejected the illusion of overnight transformation, and learned to view our unique flaws as the defining features of our character. Now, as we stand at the threshold of this final chapter, we must look at what it actually means to live an integrated life out in the world, long after the words of this script have faded into silence. Living an integrated life means changing your relationship with time itself. For the majority of our lives, we treat the present moment as a transaction. We treat today as nothing more than a bridge we have to cross to get to a better, more polished version of tomorrow. We look at our current circumstances, our current emotional state, and our current limitations, and we view them as obstacles to be overcome or delays in our real timeline. We say to ourselves, once I get past this stressful month, once I fix this specific trait, once I achieve this level of security, then I can finally relax and enjoy my life. This forward-looking anxiety is a subtle form of self-rejection. It is an internal statement that who you are right now and where you are right now is fundamentally insufficient. But the integrated self recognizes that there is no future version of you who is completely free from the human condition. There is no magical date on the calendar where the challenges of life cease to exist. The real arena of your healing is always right now, in the middle of the unresolved situations, the messy emotions, and the unpolished realities of this exact hour. When you begin to live from a place of self-acceptance, your internal dialogue shifts from a tone of demanding authority to a tone of curious mentorship. Think about the way a skilled, compassionate craftsman treats a complex piece of material. They don't scream at the wood for having a knot in it. They don't throw the stone away because it has an irregular vein running through its center. Instead, they study the material. They look at the grain. They feel the texture, and they adapt their tools to work with the unique characteristics of the medium in front of them. They understand that the knot in the wood is exactly what will give the finished piece its structural strength and its visual depth. You are the craftsman, and you are also the material. True kindness means looking at your internal landscape, your tendency to worry, your need for quiet spaces, your sharp creative focus, or your deep sensitivity, and deciding to work with the grain instead of constantly trying to split the wood. This shift changes how you navigate the inevitable setbacks of life. In the past, when you made a mistake or faced a rejection, your internal critic would immediately seize the opportunity to launch a full-scale assault. A bad day at work became an overall verdict on your intelligence. A strained relationship became proof that you are fundamentally unlovable. A moment of anxiety became a sign that you are fragile and broken. This is the mechanism of fragmentation, where every external event is used as ammunition to validate your deepest insecurities. But when you are anchored in self-acceptance, a setback is just a setback. A mistake is just a piece of data. If you miss a deadline, you don't spend 3 days calling yourself incompetent. You simply realize you were overextended. You adjust your schedule, and you move forward. The emotional bounce-back time becomes incredibly short because you are no longer burning up hours of energy defending your worth against your own mind. You know who you are. You know your value is not up for negotiation. And therefore, the storms of life can shake the branches without ripping up the roots. Furthermore, this internal peace fundamentally transforms your external relationships. It is one of the great paradoxes of human psychology that we cannot truly connect with another person until we are willing to connect with ourselves. When you are living in a state of self-rejection, you are constantly looking to the people around you to fill an internal void. You look to your career for validation, your friends for reassurance, and your partners for a sense of completeness that you refuse to give yourself. You become hyper-vigilant, constantly scanning the faces of others for signs of disapproval, criticism, or abandonment. You modify your opinions, suppress your boundaries, and perform whatever persona you think will keep you safe in their eyes. But this is not connection. It is a defensive strategy. You are hiding behind your armor, and as long as you are hiding, you can never feel truly seen or loved. The moment you accept your own flaws, your need for external validation drops dramatically. You stop asking the world to constantly reassure you that you are allowed to exist. When you look in the mirror and say, "I see my messy pieces, I see my history, and I choose to stand by myself anyway," the opinions of others lose their volatile power over your nervous system. You no longer need to perform a character to be accepted. You can speak your truth clearly, set firm boundaries without feeling a crushing weight of guilt, and allow people to see your authentic reality. If someone doesn't appreciate your perspective or handle your boundaries with respect, it no longer feels like a catastrophic injury to your soul. It simply means they are not your people, and you can walk away with your dignity entirely intact. Conversely, the people who do love you are finally able to love the real you, not the curated shield you use to hold up in front of your face. This integration also unlocks your latent creative and intellectual power. Think about how much cognitive bandwidth you have spent over the last 10 or 20 years just trying to hide your perceived deficiencies. Think of the endless loops of overthinking before sending an email, the hours spent replaying a 5-minute conversation in your head, the creative projects you never started because you were terrified they wouldn't be perfect, and the opportunities you walked away from because you convinced yourself you weren't ready. That is a massive reservoir of human potential that has been entirely locked up in the service of fear and self-protection.